Over the past decade, China has increasingly found itself on the receiving end of coordinated and targeted restrictions from the European Union, measures that seem strategically designed to limit or delay China's development across several critical industries. From semiconductors to electric vehicles, China's rapid technological advancement and industrial growth have not only reshaped global competition, but also stirred deep concern and growing unease among European nations. This anxiety appears to be manifesting in policy decisions that directly constrain Chinese participation in lucrative and strategically significant sectors of the EU market. One of the clearest examples of this shift in European policy came on June 20th of this year, when the European Commission enacted new regulations under the International Procurement Instrument, aimed squarely at China's medical device industry. The policy prohibits Chinese companies from participating in public tenders for medical devices that exceed 5 million euros in value. Even in cases where Chinese companies are awarded contracts, the rules cap their participation at a maximum of 50% of the project's total value, making full-scale involvement practically unfeasible. This move was viewed by Beijing not just as a political maneuver, but as an outright challenge to the principles of open competition and international trade norms. In response, China acted swiftly. Just a few weeks later, in July, Beijing unveiled its own countermeasure: restrictions on the procurement of EU-imported medical devices for large-scale Chinese government projects with budgets exceeding 45 million yuan. However, China was careful to limit the scope of this retaliation. It explicitly excluded European companies that are already operational within China's borders, signaling a nuanced but firm response. To understand the broader implications of this policy clash, we need to look beyond the headlines and dive into the deeper context of China's medical industry, the country's developmental goals, and the EU's evolving trade posture. As the world's most populous country, China faces immense public health challenges. The scale of its healthcare needs is staggering. Back in 2014, for example, Chinese hospitals recorded a combined 2.97 billion patient visits in a single year, 2.65 billion of those to public institutions, and 330 million to private ones. These numbers highlight both the vastness of China's medical system and the constant growing demand for advanced medical technology to meet the needs of its population. Even a decade ago, China's medical device market was already significant. By 2019, it had grown into a colossal industry valued at over 200 billion yuan, and it continues to expand annually at a steady rate of 4% to 7%. Yet despite this growth, Chinese hospitals, especially top-tier institutions, have continued to rely heavily on high-end imported equipment. Countries like Germany, the United States, and Japan have long dominated the supply of advanced diagnostic and treatment technologies to China. In 2019 alone, China imported $26.78 billion USD worth of medical devices, representing a nearly 21% increase over the previous year. Of this, European Union nations contributed roughly $3 billion USD in exports to China annually, a figure that highlights just how dependent China has been on foreign suppliers for critical medical technology. By 2024, medical devices from EU manufacturers were expected to account for approximately 35% of the Chinese market, particularly in specialized high-value sectors such as imaging diagnostics, like MRI and CT machines, and cardiovascular treatment systems. This market share reflects not just the quality of European technology, but also the limitations that have historically constrained China's domestic production capabilities in these areas. So why, then, has the EU chosen this moment to enforce restrictions on Chinese medical firms? The answer lies in the broader geopolitical and economic context. The legal foundation for the EU's new rules, known as the International Procurement Instrument, was actually proposed as far back as 2012. However, it wasn't until June 2022 that it was officially enacted and given regulatory power. Under this legal mechanism, the European Union can impose restrictions on companies from non-EU countries that do not provide reciprocal access to their public procurement markets. These restrictions can include outright bans from participating in certain tenders or punitive bid adjustments that artificially inflate their offer prices by 10% to 20%, severely undermining their competitiveness. The stated goal of this framework is to create what the EU calls a level playing field. But in practice, it functions as a protectionist tool aimed at preserving European market dominance in key sectors. The medical device industry, given its size and strategic importance, was a natural first target for implementation. The irony, however, is that China has not only been one of the biggest customers of EU medical technology, but also one of the markets most open to foreign competition in this space, until recently. For many years, China invested billions in importing top-of-the-line equipment, with some single devices costing tens of millions of dollars. These expenditures were essential to modernizing China's healthcare system, but they also placed immense financial strain on the country, particularly in rural areas where average incomes were far below even the most basic service wages in developed countries. Recognizing the vulnerability of relying so heavily on foreign imports, China made a strategic decision to pursue self-sufficiency in high-end medical technology. Yet this was no simple task. At the time, China's capabilities in medical engineering and precision manufacturing were limited. Producing a sophisticated device like a magnetic resonance imaging (MRI) scanner required expertise and technological infrastructure that China had not yet developed. The country responded by launching a nationwide initiative to foster innovation and accelerate domestic research in the medical field. Scientists, engineers, and universities were mobilized to break the technological bottlenecks that had kept China dependent on foreign equipment for so long. The results of this initiative began to materialize around 2015, when China unveiled its first domestically developed 3.0 Tesla MRI machine, the 0TM. This breakthrough caught international attention not only for its technical performance, but because it demonstrated a complete shift in China's approach to advanced medical equipment. Independence. Produced by United Imaging Healthcare, the 0TM MRI machine featured core components that were 100% made in China. One of the most notable achievements was the successful development of superconducting magnet winding technology, an area that had previously been dominated by Western manufacturers. With this single innovation, China not only broke a long-standing monopoly, but also positioned itself as a rising competitor in the global medical technology industry. This development, while celebrated domestically, likely set off alarm bells in Europe. After all, if China could achieve self-sufficiency in something as complex and high-value as MRI machines, what would stop it from gradually replacing EU imports across the board? The EU's restrictive measures can therefore be seen not just as a reaction to trade imbalances, but as a preemptive strike aimed at slowing China's trajectory in a field where Europe has traditionally held a competitive edge. Now, as both sides dig in and implement tit-for-tat restrictions, the larger question looms. How will this escalation impact the global medical device market, and will it push China even faster toward technological independence? As history has shown, when China faces external pressure, it often doubles down on self-reliance, and this case is likely no different. In recent years, Chinese medical technology has undergone a quiet but profound transformation. What once began with imitation has now matured into innovation. Through relentless research, refinement, and reverse engineering, Chinese companies have independently developed key MRI components, most notably gradient coils, and implemented cutting-edge helium-free cooling technology. These innovations haven't just reduced operational complexity, they've cut running costs by over 25%. At the heart of this technological leap stands a machine backed by 124 core patents, an emblem of how far China has come in a field once dominated by Western giants. On a technical level, China's medical imaging capabilities have reached the forefront of global standards. In both scanning speed and image clarity, Chinese equipment now performs on par with, and in some cases exceeds, established international benchmarks. Core metrics like signal-to-noise ratio and scan efficiency now meet or surpass the requirements expected by hospitals and clinics worldwide. And perhaps most notably, these machines are priced at just 60% to 70% of what imported systems cost. For hospitals across China, this has translated into a dramatic reduction in procurement costs, up to 76% in some cases, enabling broader access to advanced diagnostics. Yet the implications of this progress extend far beyond China's borders. Many countries, particularly those in the global south, face even steeper economic challenges, but still urgently need high-end medical infrastructure. Recognizing this global demand, and empowered by strong domestic policy support, Chinese manufacturers began venturing onto the world stage. In 2017, China's 3.0T MRI machines entered international markets. The shift was immediate. India's Apollo Hospitals, one of the country's largest healthcare providers, canceled several import orders in favor of more affordable Chinese alternatives. But the pace of progress didn't slow. In 2023, after years of technical evolution, China unveiled the world's first 5.0T MRI machine, a quantum leap in both image resolution and scanning speed. This breakthrough stunned the industry and signaled a new era of competition. For the first time, Chinese medical technology wasn't just catching up, it was leading. This achievement opened the doors to the European market, where skepticism had long prevailed. By 2024, Chinese medical equipment exports to the EU reached $9 billion, a 12% year-over-year increase. China's market share surged to 18.5%, a number that rattled European incumbents. Established European medical institutions began to worry. If China's growth continued unchecked, their dominance could erode rapidly. Projections suggested China's share of the EU market could soon exceed 80%, a stunning reversal in global market dynamics. Alarmed by shrinking market space, several major European players began lobbying for political action. The response came swiftly. On June 20th of this year, the EU introduced explicit trade restrictions. Chinese firms would be banned from bidding on medical device tenders exceeding $5 million. Even when permitted to participate, their maximum allowed share in a project would be capped at 50%. China denounced the move as hypocritical. The EU, long touting itself as the world's most open market, had now taken a sharp turn toward trade protectionism. From Beijing's perspective, this was a textbook case of double standards, an attempt to suppress rising competition through regulatory roadblocks. In retaliation, China introduced a set of reciprocal restrictions on July 6th. Any EU-origin medical equipment valued above 45 million yuan would be restricted in Chinese government procurement projects. Notably, these restrictions apply only to new purchases, allowing flexibility where no viable domestic or foreign alternatives exist. If only EU products meet essential clinical or technical requirements, procurement beyond the cap is still permitted. Further tightening the policy, China mandated that in any project involving non-EU participants, be it suppliers from the US, Japan, or China itself, the share of EU medical devices must not exceed 50% of the total contract value. This provision establishes a clear preference. When alternatives exist, EU products must take a back seat. It's a bold move to decrease reliance on high-end imports and boost domestic and global suppliers outside the EU. Unsurprisingly, Europe's medical device giants are feeling the impact. Siemens Healthineers, a leader in diagnostic imaging, has seen some of its flagship technologies, such as photon-counting CT scanners and ultra-high-field 7T MRI machines, priced out of the Chinese public procurement system. The financial blow is substantial. Analysts estimate that European firms like Siemens and Philips could lose at least $500 million annually in Chinese market share if current trends persist. Faced with this shifting reality, European companies are recalibrating their global strategies. Many are now turning toward untapped or underdeveloped regions, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, Africa, as alternative growth markets. Some have already acted. Mindray Medical, for instance, has begun establishing 5 new subsidiaries across Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Meanwhile, United Imaging Healthcare is targeting Hungary and Serbia, combining medical assistance programs with commercial outreach to solidify its presence. At the same time, European firms are exploring internal transformation. They're being pushed to not only compete on price, but also redefine what value means in the medical field. Enhancing product performance, expanding localized support, and delivering better after-sales service are now top priorities. In the niche but growing field of minimally invasive laparoscopic robotic surgery, companies are experimenting with hybrid models that combine cutting-edge engineering with region-specific training and support systems, helping them meet customer needs more directly while reducing dependence on external contractors. Germany in particular still holds strong cards. With its unmatched engineering expertise and a deeply embedded culture of precision manufacturing, Germany remains capable of producing world-class medical technology. If German firms can collaborate with other European companies to develop more efficient and cost-effective devices, they can remain competitive, even in a rapidly changing market. But China's rise didn't happen overnight, and it didn't happen by force. It was built on decades of patient iteration, bold investment in R&D, and an insatiable appetite for learning. From a country once known for copying, China is now setting benchmarks. Its domestically developed AI-assisted diagnostic algorithms have passed FDA and CE certification. Several Chinese technical standards have been integrated into global regulatory frameworks. These aren't just signs of approval, they are endorsements of credibility. What we're witnessing is a redefinition of the global medical device industry, one where innovation is no longer confined to the West. China's momentum is reshaping markets, rewriting rules, and forcing the world to rethink assumptions about leadership in high-end healthcare technology. The competition is no longer about who entered first, it's about who adapts best. For more insights into this evolving landscape, and to stay updated on major breakthroughs in global healthcare technology, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. There's much more to come, and you won't want to miss it.